Valley here, one of the world famous wine growing regions. I've learned that there's about 48,000 acres of vineyards in the Napa Valley, and it's divided into these appellation regions. And I've also learned that in each appellation region within the Napa Valley, there are various climates depending on how close it is to the Bay of San Francisco. And the San Francisco Bay Area influences the amount of fog and cooling that comes in. So at the south end of the Napa Valley, we have the Pinot Noirs that are grown there. And as you get towards the north end, which is more Mediterranean and hotter climate, that's where they're growing the Cabernet Sauvignons and the Sauvignon Blancs are growing up into the warmer regions, and they try to extend the growing season as long as possible. By the way, 2011 promises to be a very good wine year. The harvest is going to be delayed about 3 weeks here, meaning that there's more time for the sugars and the flavors to move into the grapes. One of the interesting things about grapes and the vines is that they can graft any new variety on an old rootstock. So one of the things that David last night shared with me from one of the vineyards was, as long as the vascular systems are connected, so the xylem and phloem, as long as those things connect up, they can graft any variety. And so, for example, here we have an old rootstock, and this old rootstock is grafted with a new variety there. Over here you can see quite clearly that they've done this grafting, and that allows us to use the rootstock that takes a long time to get established to bring out new grapes. The other thing I wanted to mention is these are the most prized bunches right here, the clusters down here at the bottom. They want to have fewer and fewer of the clusters up top, as they're not as valuable as the ones down here. These are the ones that actually change color. So, and what they said is that the winemakers will come through, they'll look at the grapes, and they'll taste them for sugar, content, acidity, and just overall flavor that is accumulating in the grapes over time. And the longer the ripening period, the better the flavors are. So this is a fantastic experience. What a great thing to see all of these things growing like this. Just like a fingerprint, every grape has a certain design of leaf. So we can actually grab the leaves, and the leaves themselves will show us and tell us what kind of grape it is that's growing. And there's guidebooks available out there. So these leaves act as a unique identifier, helping us to determine what varieties are growing. Of course, I don't know because I'm not really into this at all, but it is interesting that the design of the leaf is like a thumbprint identifying the different grapes being grown in the vineyard. These grapevines, it takes 3 years to get established, and really production really comes into play in about year 5 or 6. The Chardonnays are the shortest lasting vines, which will die in about 25 years or start to decline in production. But yesterday we were talking to somebody who said that there were vines that were as old as 100 years old that were still producing grapes and producing wine. So it takes a long time to get them established. It's very, very labor intensive, as you can see. You've got the trees that are all propped up with steel to support them. And then you've got the steel lines that go across, and of course the branches are affixed to the steel lines horizontally. And then all along it you've got the drip irrigation. And drip irrigation is what they use. Grapes can grow from a moderately fertile to very, very infertile soil. They don't require an immense amount of fertility. And at the end of the year, I guess what they're doing with a lot of the pumice now, the stuff that's left over after they mash out the fruit, they spread out the husks, the skins, and what's left of the seeds back onto the soil, and it provides a moderate amount of nitrogen for the grapes in kind of a circular type of holistic system. So kind of interesting, a lot of labor involved. I do notice quite a bit of disease can attack the grapes, and they of course are using some fungicides to keep the disease at a bay. So now we're in an area where they're just establishing the vines, and I mentioned before that the vines are established, and they can be established from stock, or they can be grafted on existing roots. These ones here are established from stock that's planted, saving them 1 year in the production cycle if they get the stock. So they plant the vines down here and they protect them. You can see that they have the rebar here. The rebar is there for support, and then they've got the trestles that come along here. This is obviously a brand new planting, and so the technology continues to advance. They're using more and more of this steel railing, and I can see here that the drip irrigation is actually going right now as we're in the field here, and the drip irrigation is being used to irrigate some cover crops that are being planted interspersed between the actual vines. As the vines grow, they'll take these branches and they'll spread the branches along the trestle, training the branches to grow and providing a base for the clusters. As you see in the other pictures as well, these vines are increasingly trimmed long and narrow, providing maximum sunlight absorption while providing a moderate amount of shade onto the clusters. I learned that the clusters really have more flavor if they're being exposed to the maximum amount of sunshine without at the same time being burnt. The vines are planted very, very precisely, and you can see here that as I'm panning through here, they're about 4 feet wide, maybe in this case 6 feet wide, with about 4 to 6 feet between the vines, and that creates an absolutely symmetrical pattern so that no matter what direction you look, you're seeing the symmetry of the planting. So that's all put together through GPS. I also noticed that there are cultivating between the rows, and cultivation provides, of course, aeration and water penetration, and also heats up the soil in the springtime when they want to get the soil warmer in the early spring. So now we're going to look inside the protective cover that is being used for the new planting, and if we go inside here, we can see that the plastic is providing a protective shield. And if you look down there, you see that green little spot down at the bottom there. That's likely where the grafting has been done. And of course, you can see the drip irrigation going at the same time. So a lot of technology being used to enhance the catch and to speed up the growth rate. Well, and the nice part about touring the Napa Valley, of course, is that the agricultural production is wine, and it's a very consumable, very delicious product. So this is Rob on another AgriTreks talking to you from O'Brien's Winery in the Napa Valley. Till next time, happy agriculture.